Her best friend destroyed our marriage. My marriage didn't fall apart because of an affair. It collapsed because of a story. A story so detailed, so confidently told, that my wife believed it without ever asking me if it was true. According to her best friend, I was seen at a restaurant called Harbor House Bistro on April 12th. Supposedly, I was sitting near the front windows, leaning across the table toward a blonde woman in a blue dress, holding her hand like I didn't have a wife at home. The description was vivid, the lighting, the table placement, even the way I allegedly laughed. It sounded real enough to destroy 8 years of marriage in a single evening. There was just one problem. On April 12th at that exact time, I was standing in a corporate conference room 40 miles away, presenting quarterly numbers to 10 colleagues and 2 regional managers. There were emails, calendar invites, security badge logs, even a group photo someone posted afterward. I wasn't at dinner with another woman. I was arguing about marketing budgets under fluorescent lights. But logic didn't matter. Emily got the call from Lauren around 9 p.m. I remember the way her face changed mid-conversation. Her expression went from relaxed to hollow in seconds. She didn't yell at first. She just looked at me like I had already confessed. I tried to ask what was wrong. She wouldn't answer. Then she hung up, walked into the bedroom, and started pulling clothes out of the closet. At first, I thought it was shock. Then she turned around and asked me how long it had been going on. No context. No explanation. Just an accusation, hanging in the air like a verdict. When I asked what she meant, she said Lauren saw me. That Lauren wouldn't lie about something like this. That the details were too specific, to be made up. That was the moment I realized I wasn't defending myself against doubt. I was defending myself against a fully constructed narrative. Within an hour, she had packed a suitcase. She told me she needed space to think. She said she couldn't even look at me without picturing it. I begged her to at least check my work calendar, call my co-workers, verify something. Anything. She said she didn't need proof. She trusted her best friend. By midnight, she was gone, staying in Lauren's guest room. By the next morning, she wasn't just thinking. She had already contacted a divorce attorney. And I was standing alone in a house we bought together, trying to understand how a single phone call had more power than 8 years of loyalty. The next morning, I didn't even get a chance to breathe before everything escalated. Emily blocked me on social media, changed her profile picture to one without me, and removed our anniversary date like it had never existed. Mutual friends started texting me carefully worded messages that felt less like support and more like quiet judgment. No one asked what happened. They already knew. Lauren had apparently told everyone. By noon, 3 different people had reached out asking if I was okay after getting caught. Caught, like there was evidence, like there was a crime scene. The speed at which the narrative spread was terrifying. It was cleaner, simpler, more entertaining than the truth. I called Emily again. This time she answered, but her voice was cold and measured. She said she didn't want to argue about details. She said what hurt wasn't just the cheating. It was a humiliation, the public aspect, the idea that someone else saw me like that. I reminded her that I wasn't there. I told her I could send her my badge logs from the office building. I forwarded her the group photo from the presentation. I even screen recorded my email timestamps. She said I was being defensive, that cheaters always scramble for proof. That line hit me harder than anything else. The more I tried to defend myself, the more guilty I sounded in her mind. It was like I was trapped inside a script someone else had written. That night, I drove to Harbor House Bistro myself. I walked inside and asked to speak to the manager. I showed him a photo of myself and asked if I'd been there on April 12th. He checked their reservation system. Nothing under my name. Nothing under Emily's. Nothing matching the time Lauren claimed. Then, he did something unexpected. He let me see a snippet of security footage from that evening. There was a man sitting by the front window. He had dark hair, a similar build, even a similar jacket to one I own. From a distance, in the right lighting, I could see how someone might think it was me. But when the camera angle shifted, it was obvious. Different face, different posture, a stranger. I felt relief for exactly 5 seconds. Because then it hit me. Lauren didn't describe him as someone who looked like me. She described specific gestures I supposedly made. She described me leaning forward, whispering. She described the woman touching my wrist. Those details weren't visible from across a restaurant window, which meant one of 2 things. Either she got closer than she admitted, or she never saw anything at all. I didn't go home after that. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my reflection in the windshield, replaying every conversation I'd ever had with Lauren. There were small things I ignored before, how she always found excuses to text me instead of Emily, how she'd ask about our fights with a little too much curiosity, how she once joked that I deserved someone who actually understood ambition. At the time, I brushed it off as harmless. Now it didn't feel harmless. I drove straight to Emily's apartment. She opened the door, but didn't let me in. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. I told her about the restaurant, about the footage, about the guy who only looked like me from far away. I expected relief on her face. Instead, she asked one question. Why would Lauren lie? I didn't have a clean answer. I said, maybe jealousy, maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe she thought it was me and filled in the blanks. Emily shook her head slowly. She said Lauren sounded certain. Too certain. Then she told me something that made my stomach drop. Lauren had cried when she told her. Not dramatic crying. Quiet, shaking, protective crying. The kind that feels sincere. And apparently, Lauren had added something she never told me about. She claimed she saw me holding the woman's hand outside the restaurant before getting into a taxi together. That wasn't just a mistaken identity. That was a full story. I felt anger rising, but underneath it was something worse. Fear. If Lauren was willing to construct something that detailed, this was an accident. I asked Emily if she could call Lauren in front of me. Just ask small, specific questions. What color was the woman's coat? What taxi company? What time exactly? Emily hesitated, but agreed. She put the phone on speaker. Lauren answered almost immediately, voice soft, concerned. Emily told her I was there. There was a pause. A tiny one, but I heard it. Emily started asking details. At first, Lauren answered smoothly. Red coat. Around 8:30. Yellow taxi. Then Emily asked which side of the street they got into the taxi from. Silence. Lauren said she didn't remember that part. It was dark. She hadn't paid attention. Emily pressed a little more. Which direction did the taxi drive? Another pause. Longer this time. Lauren's voice shifted. She said she didn't understand why she was being interrogated. That she only told the truth because she cared. I stepped close to the phone and calmly asked one thing. If she saw me so clearly, why didn't she call Emily that night instead of waiting 2 weeks? Lauren hung up. The silence in the apartment felt heavier than any argument we'd had before. Emily looked at me differently then. Not convinced. Not fully trusting. But uncertain. And uncertainty is dangerous. Because even when doubt cracks, it doesn't disappear. It just leaves fractures. A week after I found those messages, he started trying harder than I'd ever seen. Flowers. Dinner reservations. Random little compliments he hadn't said in years. On the surface, it looked like effort, but it didn't feel like love. It felt like damage control. He kept saying he understood why I was hurt, that he'd been lonely, even while living next to me. That word destroyed me. Lonely. We shared a bed every night. We planned a future. I supported him when he lost his job. And somehow he was lonely. I started questioning everything. Every late night at work. Every time he turned his phone face down. Every small mood shift I used to ignore. My brain wouldn't shut up. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating properly. I was turning into someone paranoid and anxious, and I hated that version of myself. One evening I asked him directly if he had feelings for her. He hesitated. It was only a second, but it was enough. He said it was just attention, that she made him feel admired and appreciated during a time when he felt like he was failing in life. That explanation was somehow worse than a lie, because it meant he didn't cheat out of lust. He cheated out of emotional need. I realized then that he hadn't come to me with that need. He didn't tell me he felt insecure or lost. He wanted someone new, someone easier, someone who didn't see his worst days. We tried couples therapy. 2 sessions in, he admitted he wasn't sure if he was in love anymore or just comfortable. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. For years, I thought we were building something solid. He was apparently just settling. That night, I packed a small bag and went to my sister's place. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. I just felt tired, like my body finally accepted what my heart didn't want to. The worst part? He didn't stop me. He said he needed space to figure himself out. After 5 years together, I became something he needed to think about. Sitting on my sister's couch, staring at a ceiling that wasn't mine, I finally understood something terrifying. I wasn't losing him. I had already lost him the moment he chose someone else to feel understood by. Over the next few weeks, the house felt like a museum. Every corner held memories, but now they were tainted. I avoided the kitchen because his coffee mug still sat there untouched. I couldn't even open the closet without seeing his jacket, the one he wore on our first date, the one I used to steal hugs from in the mornings. Every object became a reminder that he had already left me long before I physically walked out. Friends tried to reach out. Some invited me for coffee. Some just sent texts checking if I was okay. But I started noticing the subtle shifts. People who had been close to us both started taking sides without asking questions. I realized how quickly narrative spread, how easy it was for someone else's words to rewrite your life. I had proof of everything, messages, receipts, timestamps, but it felt useless because the person who needed to believe me the most, the one I trusted with my life, already made her choice. Then came the day he tried to explain himself again. He said he wanted to make amends, to show he was sorry for how everything had spiraled. I listened, polite but distant, letting the words pass through without letting them land. Every sentence he said reminded me of the betrayal, the nights I stayed awake, questioning what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. His apology didn't rebuild trust. It highlighted how fragile it had been all along. I started reclaiming the small things for myself, making plans that didn't involve him, walking through the neighborhood alone, cooking meals without waiting for him. Every act felt tiny, almost meaningless, but it was mine. Slowly, I realized I didn't need him to validate my existence. I didn't need him to apologize or explain. I just needed to survive the aftermath he left behind. One night, scrolling through my phone, I came across a photo from our first anniversary. We were laughing, arms wrapped around each other, oblivious to the world. My chest tightened, but instead of pain, I felt clarity. That was who we were then. not who we became. And that was enough to finally step forward, even if it meant leaving the life we built together behind. It was a rainy Saturday when he called me again. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like someone practicing for a speech. He asked if we could meet somewhere public, somewhere neutral, to finally talk about everything. Part of me wanted to say no, to avoid opening the wound again. But another part, the part that still hoped for clarity, agreed. We chose a small cafe near the park, one with big windows so passers-by could see, but not over here. I arrived first, sipping my tea, heart hammering, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. When he walked in, the familiar nervousness in his eyes made me realize how much I had still carried. He didn't rush to explain. He simply sat across from me, hands folded, and let me speak first. I told him how I felt betrayed, how every word from Vanessa had torn our world apart. I didn't hold back, the anger, the confusion, the heartbreak. And as I spoke, I noticed him listening, really listening, not interrupting, not defending. That alone was a kind of apology I had never received before. Then he slid his phone across the table. The screenshots, every message Vanessa had sent, every plan she had laid out to destroy our marriage. I picked up the device, fingers trembling, and scrolled. It was worse than I imagined. She had meticulously crafted the lie, made sure every detail was believable, and watched as our lives collapsed around her story. The proof was undeniable. He hadn't cheated, hadn't lied, hadn't even been near the restaurant Vanessa claimed he was at. I put the phone down slowly. My hands still shook, but my mind cleared. The anger was still there, yes, but it was no longer aimless. I looked at him and asked the question I had been holding back for weeks. Why didn't you fight harder when she first told me? He swallowed, and then he said something I wasn't expecting. Because sometimes people don't see the truth until they're ready. And I knew I couldn't make you believe me if you weren't ready. That stung, but it also made sense. He hadn't walked away from me emotionally. I had been pushed away by my own choices, by believing someone else over him. For the first time in months, I felt the weight of responsibility land squarely on my shoulders. And with that, a strange clarity settled in. I could forgive him for what he didn't do, for what he couldn't control. But trust, once broken, wasn't something that could just be turned back on. We parted that day with silence, but it wasn't the bitter, suffocating silence of before. It was different, calm, measured, full of understanding, even if it didn't fix what was broken. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't lost. I was simply aware of the truth, aware of my own strength, and aware that some lessons, no matter how painful, were worth carrying forward. Over the next few days, the truth about Meredith's manipulation started quietly leaking. Friends who had sided with Caroline during the divorce began piecing things together. At first, it was small comments, mutual friends mentioning odd timing or how certain details never added up. Then came screenshots circulating among colleagues, showing Meredith's careful planning, her messages about ending Caroline and Alex's marriage for her own sense of control. Suddenly, the social narrative shifted. People who once whispered behind Alex's back now questioned everything they'd assumed. Hannah, Caroline's closest co-worker, was the first to cut ties completely. Others followed. The group chats that had been full of sympathy for Caroline's betrayal went silent. Meredith tried to explain herself, claiming she only wanted to protect her friend, but too many remembered patterns from previous incidents. Her influence crumbled, and the aura of untouchable power she'd built for years evaporated. Meanwhile, Caroline started reaching out to Alex. Long, apologetic texts arrived on his phone. Explanations, confessions, desperate pleas to halt the divorce. Even flowers left at his office. Alex ignored them all. He deleted messages unread, refused the flowers, and avoided places where he might see her. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted closure. The divorce was finalized without contest, the house sold, assets divided exactly as planned. By January, Alex had moved into a small apartment across town, sunlight flooding the living room, free of shared memories that could weigh him down. He stayed in touch only with a few friends who had stood by the truth, carefully rebuilding his life. He began dating again in the spring, slowly, cautiously, with someone who questioned things, verified facts, and valued honesty over drama. Caroline had learned too late that she had trusted the wrong person at the wrong time. Alex realized something important. Leaving someone who chooses lies over truth isn't failure. It's self-respect. And with that clarity, he felt something he hadn't in months, peace. He hadn't lost his wife because of Meredith's lies. He had lost her the moment Caroline decided his word wasn't worth defending. Now, life moved forward, quiet but whole, built on truth he could finally trust.